Hey guys, in today's video we'll take a look at universal red dot sight mounts for pistols. I'll explain the basics and I'll also show you how to set them up to your preferred footprint. Most devices on the market will likely use one of these footprints, but they may appear under a different name, especially with lesser known brands. So I recommend checking compatibility on our website, because it's very likely that your Red Dot sight will fit one of these universal mounts. We update our compatibility database regularly, so it's worth checking out. I'll be using mounts made by Tony System and Outer Impact to show you a few differences you might encounter between brands. And a quick note before we start, you should be able to install these mounts yourself, but we always recommend visiting a gunsmith and following the manufacturer's instructions. However, if you decide to do it yourself, we recommend test fitting your Red Dot sight with the adapter before mounting the adapter on your pistol. With that out of the way, let's jump right in. These mounts are designed for pistols that are not optic ready. They replace your rear sight and fit into the rear sight dovetail. Probably the biggest advantage is that these universal mounts use sets of pins to support a number of different footprints, giving you the freedom to switch to a different Red Dot sight down the line. And that's also the key difference from mounts with specific footprints. Those can only accommodate one specific footprint. As I mentioned earlier, there are a few different manufacturers, so the procedure may vary slightly, but the basic principle should always stay the same. The first and probably most important step is to double check the compatibility of your Red Dot sight and mount before installing it on your pistol. The best way to do that is to set up your preferred footprint on the mount and test fit your Red Dot sight on it. I'll show you how to set up the Trigicon RMR footprint standard, which is widely used by various manufacturers. Holosun, for example, uses this footprint on their 407C, 507C and many other models. Even though I'll be setting up the Trigicon footprint, the process is exactly the same for other footprint standards as well. Tony System includes a compatibility table with a diagram on the other side. Find your Red Dot sight in the table and use the corresponding pins. In this case, we'll be using pins labeled with the letter Y. Now we'll check where the pins should go using the diagram. They go here in the front, so we'll place them there. I recommend using tweezers for this. Also, make sure the pins are correctly seated and not crooked. These pins have fairly tight tolerances, so it might take a moment to seat them properly. In this case, the pins should be placed with the thicker end facing downward, but the different manufacturers may require the opposite. Now simply place your Red Dot sight on top. It should align with the screw holes labeled number 4 on the diagram. Lightly fasten the screws and thoroughly check if everything fits properly. Once you've verified compatibility, remove your Red Dot sight, the pins and the set screws from the dovetail. Then you can proceed with installing the mount onto your slide. Make sure your gun is clear and proceed with the field strip. If you don't have any special tools to safely hold your pistol slide, you can use a piece of leather or rubber in your vise. Clamp the slide down firmly, but be careful not to damage it. Loosen the rear sight screws and use a drifting tool to hammer the sight out. Just make sure your rear sight has a safe place to land. Use your preferred gun oil to clean the dovetail and wipe off any excess. Now it depends on what type of mount you have. If you have something similar to this Tony System mount, make sure the set screws are removed. Then align it properly with the dovetail. You can now carefully hammer it in using your drift tool. Make sure your mount is properly centered and apply a bit of medium thread locker before tightening the set screws. If your mount looks more like the one from Outer Impact, you most likely won't need to hammer the dovetail piece in. You'll just slide it into place and snap on the plate. Again, apply a bit of thread locker to the screws and tighten them to the recommended torque specification. Now it's time to properly install your Red Dot sight. You'll need to place the correct pins again and fasten the screws, just like we showed in the second chapter. Before tightening the screws, apply a bit of thread locker and then torque them to spec. The same procedure applies to most other mounts and Red Dot sights, only the labels and markings will differ. That's everything for today's video. I hope it was helpful. Subscribe for more and I'll see you next time.